Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis news from April 25th to May 1st. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, but then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready, if you choose to do so. We're going to start with this news from Marijuana Moment, as New Jersey sold nearly 2 million in adult use cannabis sales on the first day of sales, state data shows. And so we're very happy to see this, as more than 12,000 customers bought almost 2 million worth of recreational cannabis products on the first day of recreational cannabis sales in New Jersey last week, according to numbers the State Cannabis Regulatory Commission released on Wednesday. 12 dispensaries only reported total gross sales of nearly 1.9 million made by 12,438 customers. And while that is a good start, it really is just a drop in the bucket to what we're going to see long-term in New Jersey. And obviously, the more dispensaries that the CRC would approve to open, the more sales that they would drive, the more tax revenue, the more jobs they would provide to New Jerseyans, the more benefits that they would see. And it is just kind of funny when you compare this to Montana, a state with just 1 million people, compared to New Jersey, a state with 9 million people. Montana, in their first day, did roughly 1.5 million people. And obviously, New Jersey had the potential to do a lot more than that, but because they only limited it to 12 dispensaries, this is what we got. So again, it's a good start, but the data shows that the market is effectively serving both adult use consumers and patients, Brown said in a statement. While they continue to monitor inventory and access for patients and are prepared to take enforcement against the ATC, why do you want to enforce laws against them? Why don't you want to work with these companies and help the whole industry thrive in New Jersey? That's just what I don't understand, the mindset of these regulators. That does not meet the requirements for patient access and supply. As I imagine MSOs in New Jersey are doing what they need to do to stay compliant to give this industry a shot. But nonetheless, advocates expect the market will eventually exceed $2 billion a year. But also, just to compare, New Mexico, another state with a smaller population than New Jersey, even larger than Montana, but likely opened a lot more dispensaries, therefore saw more sales, which launched recreational weed sales earlier this month. Customers spent more than 1.9 million, so similar to New Jersey, on cannabis on the day the market opened, not counting sales of medical cannabis. And so either way, good start from New Jersey, and we're very happy to see this on top of the strong 420 sales. While onto this one from Marijuana Moment is top Schumer Aide talks next steps for cannabis legalization and cannabis banking reform. So there's a lot of fluff in here. It's not going to mean much, but then after this, I'll show you sort of what this, what everything that this aide has mentioned sort of leads us to and where we're at. We're still in uncharted waters. We just have to wait for America Competes Act, and that will take time. And so what I am doing is trying to accumulate as I make more money with my new serving job, and will continue to accumulate at these prices if I am so lucky and fortunate enough to do so. But that is just, again, my plan. This is not advice. Do what you need to do. Plan accordingly for your own situation. But again, plan for the worst and expect to be pleasantly surprised, because SAFE does need to pass at some point in order to get billions in cash off the streets and to save American lives. And for that reason, it is good to remind you that SAFE is a matter of when, not if. And so, at an event hosted by the Council for Federal Cannabis Regulation, Schumer's chief counsel, Reginald Babin, said that there is a bit more work to be done in terms of figuring out where the sweet spot is, at least in the Senate, in terms of what we can do this year. He said that finding that balance is work that we are currently undertaking in the Senate side. Oh my God, so much talk, it's painful. While a draft version of his boss's CAOA was unveiled last summer, Babin said that the final legislative text will hopefully be filed in the near future as they perfect that framework. Yeah, right, bud. I don't believe anything you say at this point. Babin was pressed at Thursday's event, even when the time would be right to allow incremental reform to advance. I would say it makes sense when it makes sense. He's a professional talking out of his buttholder. He said, adding that legislating is not a thing where you can identify a time on the calendar where it makes the most sense to do something. Actually, if you have the votes, like the Safe Banking Act, you can do that. It's a never-ending process, but we're in a constant conversation with a number of issues. Ridiculous. More fluff as we go on. Babin said that the America Competes Act will have significant ramifications across a number of sectors, and that there are a number of moving parts that probably exceed my capacity to articulate. We have to account for all those moving parts, the Schumer aide said, and for that reason, it would make sense for them to leave the Safe Banking Act in the America Competes Act, as they recently got a little something from Biden that they could determine to be the plus in terms of clemency and a bit of social justice that is appealing to their voter base. But more importantly, did want to highlight this. While it's important that congressional leaders like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Patty Murray, the third-ranking Democrat in the Senate, have made a point to push for safe banking on the broader legislation, Babin said that it's equally important to account for the fact that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has zeroed in on the banking provision as an example of a policy he would resist being attached to broad legislation. And while this is really just talk and more speculation at this point, I did think it was interesting and noteworthy because it just shows that the Dems are getting back into their politicking season because there is an election in November. And so obviously an easy thing that they can do is try to throw the other side under the bus to their voter base and say, yeah, well, if McConnell was in there, we wouldn't even get SAFE at all. We'd get nothing cannabis related. And while that is also speculation, we don't know that, it is possible that with the support that the SAFE Banking Act is getting, that Mitch would allow SAFE only through and nothing else, right? And so if the Dems are going to start throwing the other party under the bus, it leads me to believe that they have to do something from now until November, and that would come in the form of SAFE banking, possibly in the America Competes Act, and then a little bit more done maybe with the HOPE Act. Now again, this is still speculation, but I just wanted to add because I think that is promising. So lastly, it's too early to tell what the outcome is going to be given all the myriad of factors that are going to come into play from now until whenever the bill is hopefully reported out of the conference and voted on in the Senate, he said. And so he is talking about the America Competes Act bill right here from my understanding, but at the same time, it's too early to tell because they don't do anything and we're just going to have to wait patiently and see what happens. But ultimately, I am still invested in MSOs and I will continue to be invested in them. And as I start to earn more income again, I will start to average down and I will share when I do end up buying more shares with you because, again, I just think this is a great opportunity that will not last forever. And so on to some other news, more support for the SAFE Banking Act, so thank you, Tom Engel, for sharing this one. Today, Rep. Blumenauer and Rep. Perlmutter sent a letter urging House leaders to fight to keep cannabis banking language in the final America Competes Act Conference Committee report, highlighting their substantial support for SAFE banking among conferees. And we love to hear that because the conferees are the ones that determine whether SAFE passes or not. And obviously, as we move through uncharted waters and as time goes on, there is more and more reason to pass SAFE, obviously, because New York, New Jersey, they need SAFE banking to actually function in order to get those markets online. Plus, obviously, saving lives, getting cash off the street. So just to add, U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, a Democrat from Illinois, who's number 2 behind Schumer, and he is one of the 42 co-sponsors of the Senate version of SAFE. And note that there are 9 Republican co-sponsors as well. So there's more info on this link. But just to add that, number 1, Schumer, number 2, Dick Durbin, number 3, Patty Murray, all highlighting SAFE as a top priority that they want to get done. And so obviously this just increases our chances. Again, as time moves forward and SAFE is needed to pass, the longer that it doesn't pass, we just need the solution more than we did before, right? And so lastly, Bankers Association from all 50 states pushed Senate to pass cannabis banking reform as part of a large-scale bill. So more pressure. So the American Bankers Association and the state associations say that the SAFE Banking Act is an urgently needed, widely supported, bipartisan legislative solution to allow banks to handle the proceeds from state-licensed cannabis businesses and the accountants, skilled trades, landlords, law firms, and other services providers they rely upon for legal operations. You make this change, you pass the SAFE banking, it solves many problems for many Americans, many domestic problems that they would be happy having solved. And so onto this one from Brady Cobb. I wanted to share this. I have 3 little snippets just to give you an idea of how long this conference process might take. And the reality is we don't know. It can take months, but the important thing to remember is that it does need to get done at some point. So the first one coming from Brady Cobb, Senate conference process on competes should commence tomorrow, but process is likely going to take some time, so stay tuned. So that's the first take we've got. This was as of April 27th. Then we got this one from Natalie Fertig, who writes for Politico. Important time frame info for the Competes Act, which may include the SAFE Banking Act. Again, we'll have to wait for the final version to find out from my understanding, but lead GOP sponsor Todd Young just told me he expects the conference to take at least a few months. So, and maybe they're done by the end of summer, hopefully. But again, honestly, I see this as a positive because it just gives me more time to save up more cash and start buying more shares. And so obviously, I'm hoping that this takes as long as possible at this point in time. But again, all we can do is plan accordingly. And so lastly, wanted to share this one from Todd Harrison. For immediate release as of April 27th, 2022, contact Justin Goodman, who Schumer's contact, I believe. But just to add this, Majority Leader Schumer remarks announcing a path forward to conference on jobs and competition legislation. So again, this doesn't give us a timeline. We know that it could be a few months, but just wanted to share this. The Senate Majority Leader today delivered remarks announcing that tomorrow the Senate will vote on formally moving to conference with the House on jobs and competitive legislation. Under the agreement, the Senate will vote on a series of motions to instruct conferees next week. So essentially, this just says that the Senate voted on their version without the SAFE Banking Act. It passed, and now they take the Senate version of the America Competes Act that does not have the SAFE Banking and the House version of the America Competes Act that does have the SAFE Banking. They go into conference process, and all the conferees talk amongst each other and decide which ends up going in the final bill, because what they need to do is take the discrepancies of the two and make sure that both bills match in the end before they can pass it. And so that is why this is a very important process and why many advocates Lawmakers even seem hopeful that SAFE actually has a chance staying in this final version as opposed to the NDAA in December, where Chuck Schumer pulled it out. And so I wanted to share some snippets from investment firms. Thank you, Todd Harrison, for sharing this one. This is Shooter McGinley on U.S. Cannabis. I do believe this is from Needham. I'm not exactly sure. Yes, it is from Needham. And so Cannabis, first quarter 2022 preview and outlook for Green Thumb, Cureleaf, and Ascend Wellness. And I believe this is mostly a snippet on New Jersey, but so you can pause to read if you wanted to get more info. But main snippet, we expect first quarter to be nadir for 2022 sales. I don't know what that means, to be honest. I apologize. So I can't provide the context there, and believe prospects for safe banking becoming a law this year have increased. So at least that's notable to add. While this one comes from Isaac Boltanski on U.S. Cannabis, we believe the odds are still in favor of the cannabis banking bill becoming law as part of this package or shortly thereafter as part of the annual defense bill. And again, while we would hope for more cannabis reform at the federal level so that we can get as many nonviolent cannabis offenders out of jail and right as many of the past wrongs, if incremental reform is all we can get, we want to take that and try and move along as we can, as opposed to wanting to get everything and getting nothing. So this is from BTIG on U.S. Cannabis, and so you can pause to read, given the nexus with cannabis banking and trade policy, how long will the China Competitiveness Conference take? And so you can pause to read. Well, these snippets, you might not be able to read it. You can grab the link below if you wanted to look into it more deeply. And so a few others. This one is, thanks Todd for sharing this one, Jeffries on U.S. Cannabis, SAFE puzzle pieces. And so this is talking about SAFE and, any sort of potential development with what we've gotten in terms of news in the last few weeks, increasing the odds. Again, this is just speculation. All you can really do, I think, is, plan accordingly for your own situation. And in my case, all I can do is just keep buying these companies and wait until this does eventually happen. But yeah, plan accordingly for your own spot. But this is a little bit more info on SAFE from Jeffries. Well, we've got this one as well from Jeffries on New York and U.S. Cannabis. So thank you, Todd, for sharing this one. And apparently this one comes from the New York Cannabis Chair, Tremaine Wright, saying she expects cannabis products from conditional growers to be available for recreational sale by the fall. And so this does make me bullish again that SAFE is going to end up passing in America Competes, because while we've seen this delay for the last 15 months, the reality is Montana's now launched, New Mexico's now launched, New Jersey's now launched, and if New York is going to launch, they all need safe banking for this industry to actually be able to continue and thrive as a, and if they continue to crush it, it's not a good sign, and I don't think that is going to be the case. And so also just wanted to share that, hey, if New York Cannabis Chair is saying this sort of thing, then we can hold her accountable in the fall if sales don't begin as well. And so it is a big step for them to make this claim, because then they have to hold themselves accountable. And if they don't hold themselves accountable, we have to hold them accountable. But nonetheless, just wanted to share this, as this is good news, because the sooner New York can launch, the better for the entire East Coast and all of the U.S. cannabis industry as well. So more info if you wanted to read. Otherwise, you can grab the link below, or so you can pause to read. Well, I wanted to share this one from the Hill, as Democrats cannot blow their cannabis midterm opportunity. And I do agree, but that is ultimately up to the Democrats. But I just wanted to share a bit of info on here, because while opinion writers and pundits are spending countless hours diagnosing the Democrats' problems, few highlight a painfully obvious solution to the party's plight. Just to share, as we know, the polling data is pretty adamant that cannabis is very popular, so you can pause to read that if you like. But just to summarize it, SRSS's research poll is not a fluke. These bipartisan levels of support have been consistent for some time. In fact, cannabis legalization now has such a solid and broad base of support that it is hard to think of any other political issue that rivals it. And for that reason, we know the Dems ought to take advantage, and the ball is in their court. And so I do hope that they do the right thing from now until November. Well, I just wanted to share this one, because if they don't, then the good news is that Todd Harrison shares Rep. Nancy Mace said she plans to push Republican leadership to advance cannabis reform if the party takes control of Congress. And so ultimately, it's the Dems' issue to lose from now until November. And I don't think it'd be very smart to do nothing and to use cannabis as another carrot for another election, because I don't think that's going to swing, and the pendulum would just ultimately go the other way. But I just wanted to add that I think the Safe Banking Act has a lot of bipartisan support. So it is possible that the Safe Banking Act alone could get through, mainly again because it's good policy, it saves lives, gets billions of cash off the streets, and I'm sure the Republicans would want to do what the bankers want them to do. It seems to be more of a Republican thing than a Democrat thing. But also worth noting that I believe Nancy Mace's the States Reform Act is the best possible cannabis legalization bill that we have. It would deschedule cannabis, leave it up to the states' rights, and it has the lowest amount of taxes that would be good for the industry overall. But I do believe Amazon is still backing that. So there is a possibility of actually getting some cannabis legislation done under Republican leadership. I do believe that. And again, this is is still speculation. It's early, but just wanted to share that this is an easy issue for the Republicans to steal from the Dems if they do nothing. So on to MSO news. Just wanted to share this one from Ben Kovler as he writes, or he shares his annual shareholder letter to Green Thumb Industry shareholders. So just wanted to share this. You can grab the link below if you wanted to go through it. Now I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but he highlights what has not changed our principles. 2021 scorecard, another year of strong results. And while the growth might have not been as big as anticipated because new states that were supposed to come online were delayed, and they have come online now, but it just took them a lot longer. It's very, I think, important to highlight that their strong sales, while we've not seen the growth yet, we saw strong, steady sales that continued, and we'll likely see the growth come in time with New Jersey and New York coming online. Entered 3 highly attractive states, and so you can pause to read more info. Otherwise, you can grab the link below. Continued connecting the dots to scale our business. Open markets with careful due diligence, heads down, execute, and ignore the noise. And so this is a good visual, the impact of 280E, if you wanted to pause and try to get a better understanding of how heavily 280E impacts these companies. And once that gets removed, how much more profit they're going to end up keeping. An opportunity for all, especially people that can, open up their own Roth IRA or TFSA, find my channel and consider investing for the future and benefit themselves. And so with that said, just a lot more, but the green wave does roll on. And so you can grab the link below if you wanted to check this out. Well, happy to share that Verano announces opening of their 45th Florida Move medical cannabis dispensary in Hobie Sound, as Move Hobie Sound is located at 10455 SC Federal Highway, a busy thoroughfare with an average daily traffic count of 25,500 vehicles, while the dispensary is situated in Florida's tamed Treasure Coast, an area known for its beaches and tourist attractions. Seems like a nice location for those vacationers, while Verano's active operations span 13 states comprised of 96 dispensaries and 12 cultivation and processing facilities with more than 1 million of square foot of cultivation capacity. And so good to see Verano continuing to expand. Well, just wanted to share this one as I haven't been able to go through Verano's Q4 earnings quite yet. But Sayshu Metacharla, another one who I've referenced in the past, who gives his main breakdowns of these MSO earnings, shares his Q4 2021 earnings takeaways for Verano. And so there's about 14 snippets here, and so you can grab the link below if you wanted to check that out. But I do hopefully plan to get a Verano video done next week in time when Green Thumb releases their earnings. And then before you know it, we're already in May, and we'll see the MSO's earnings for Q1 come through. But nonetheless, just wanted to share this if you wanted to grab this. And again, this is for Verano's Q4 earnings. And so on to Office of Medical Cannabis Use from Florida for this past week. As we can see, from April 25th to the 29th, Curaleaf opened another dispensary at Pembroke Park. Liberty Health Sciences, owned by Air Wellness, opened one in Tampa, and Sanctuary Cannabis opened one in West Palm Beach. And I do apologize, I don't know the parent company or the owner company behind the Sanctuary Cannabis brand. But to add qualified patient counts, they've increased it up to 713,391, which reflects an increase of 2,921 patients week over week. So good to see the growth continue there. Well, if we take a look at the dispensations from April 22nd to the 28th, we can see the number of milligrams of THC sold, milligrams of CBD sold, and ounces of smokable flower sold for all the MSOs in the state of Florida. And so good to see that Liberty Health Sciences is catching up to Curaleaf in locations, but obviously Curaleaf is selling a little bit more, or not a little bit more, a lot more in numbers of milligrams and ounces sold, but nonetheless, strong sales across the board. And so you can check to see if any MSO that you're invested in the state of Florida week over week is increasing their market share or decreasing it as well. But you don't need to crunch the numbers yourself if you don't want to, because thankfully Pierre Gilles does make this comp sheet available. And so thank you, Pierre, as he breaks down the Florida flower market share comp sheet sales for the MSOs in Florida. But keep in mind, this is just from flower sales, not milligrams of THC or milligrams of CBD as well. But we can see Trulieve, Curaleaf, Move, which is owned by Verano, Certera Wellness, I believe, is owned by Consortium. I could be wrong though, so don't quote me there. And Liberty Health Sciences, owned by Air Wellness. And so you can go through this list or grab the link below if you'd like to favorite it. But just to share that this is as of April 29th. So I do believe that this is with last week's data, and then later this week he'll update it with the new data that we do end up getting. But on to some state news as well, as Todd Harrison shares this, reiterating what we heard from an investment snippet, that the New York recreational cannabis sales likely will begin by fall, state regulator says. And so hopefully they can hold themselves accountable to this. That way we don't have to. But I think it's worth pointing out that they say likely, so it doesn't mean that they will begin by fall, but it's better to share that it's by fall as opposed to the end of fall or anything like that. And so again, this does make me more bullish on safe passing, because the longer that they just delay safe and the more states that come online, like New Jersey, New Mexico, Montana, think about the small business owners and the minority entrepreneurs. They need safe Otherwise, it's just going to be MSOs and like big alcohol and big tobacco. And so for that reason, we'd like to think Schumer might look out for those in his state, but we'll just have to wait and see if that's the case. Well, apparently Georgia voters will decide on cannabis ballot questions next month. Should cannabis be legalized, taxed, and regulated in the same manner as alcohol for adults 21 of age or older? And so hopefully we will get an update from this, but just wanted to share this as more states are starting to consider putting cannabis legalization on their ballot, especially good to see out of Georgia, while Maine apparently had some various cannabis bills become law absent Governor Mills' signatures today. And so interesting to see some cannabis bills become law without the requirement of the signature, but apparently home deliveries and expanded protections for caregivers and greater diversity became law on April 26th. And so that's really all the news I got out of this, but good job, Maine, as you continue to reform your cannabis program and make it more accessible for your citizens. Well, I wanted to share this one as Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania obviously sees the pressure from New Jersey and New York and is calling on his lawmakers to get legalization done, as well as our neighbors in New Jersey just began selling recreational cannabis. That means Pennsylvanians are crossing the border to partake in legalized cannabis, and they are losing the tax revenue. Those profits should stay here in Pennsylvania. Legislature, let's legalize it. So it's an easy thing for them to do. They just have to, agree with what the people of Pennsylvania want and get the job done. Well, the good news is that Pennsylvania lawmakers are working on getting this done, even GOP lawmakers, and I do believe they're also pushing to get it put on the ballot if they can't get that done. So pressure is mounting, though, which we love to see. And so this was a good interview from the Benzinga Cannabis Conference, and so just wanted to share the biggest legalization bill America has seen, Rep. Mace and her Amazon-backed bill, the States Reform Act. And so just going to share this clip. I didn't end up watching the full interview, but I did find it somewhat informative, and so you can tune in to watch if you like. But just to highlight what Nancy Mace sees going forward in terms of other bills that actually has a shot versus her States Reform Act. So just going to share a minute clip here.
Lastly, thank you. And then the fourth is having the regulatory framework. More doesn't have the regulatory framework. The taxes are too high. There are not guardrails in there. There are not protections for vets. But the States Reform Act treats cannabis like alcohol. So if you're a retailer, you go through TTB. If you're a grower, you go through the Department of Ag. If you're doing medical, you go through the FDA. It spreads it out. It's turnkey. There's already the framework there. You don't have to wait. You can just press go and be done with it. But the MORE Act didn't have that regulatory framework at the federal level, and it wasn't bipartisan. And so I have a red line on taxes, but in my bill, really everything else is negotiable. If we keep taxes low, then everything else we can work on together. Yeah. And that's been my message from day one, and will continue to be the message. But the States Reform Act is the only bill, it's the last man standing. There's no other cannabis bill in the Congress today that has any chance in hell of moving forward.
Yeah, so thank you for fighting, Nancy, and keep leading this charge, because obviously it's the Dems' battle to lose, and you can pick up the ball if they continue to fumble. And so lastly, I wanted to share this one from Graham Farrar sharing this tweet from Elon Musk. Now, I couldn't find this tweet myself, but I just wanted to share it because if it is real, I don't know what it means, but I just wanted to share it because if Elon is in the know and is secretly plotting something in the cannabis industry, that would be the best thing that we could not have anticipated, as apparently he tweeted on April 27th, "Next, I'm buying a weed brand to replace indica and sativa with a terpene-based strain classification system." And so the stage is set for 2022, and I cannot wait to watch the rest of the year unfold, as I have no doubt cannabis will be a major election issue, especially if the Dems choose to do nothing from now until then. And so lastly, just a reminder that some of the Tier 1 MSOs will start reporting their Q1 earnings already, and so we start with Green Thumb Industries on May 4th, and then Cureleaf on May 9th. Some of the other MSOs haven't released their dates yet, but I will update those as we come along. But just like that, we're already in May, and we're already going to see how some of the sales in January, February, and March worked out for some of the MSOs, and then we can also compare how, the difference between Croptober, how much Croptober hit Q4 versus Q1, and it'll just give us more information to, plan accordingly for the rest of the year. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.